Hello, audience. Hello, fellow empowered women. Thank you for joining me today. So pleased to have you come join me. I'm Leanne Wakeling, and I'm a certified metadynamics coach at the professional master level. I'm the mother of 4 adult children, and for those who may have seen my earlier presentation, that I'm a geek for human development. One of the reasons that I've become so geeky is not that I like to analyse much, except that perhaps maybe. And part of it, the journey for me has been understanding, growing to understand me, getting a better understanding of myself. Because I don't know whether you can relate, but I have been somewhat of a what's wrong with me kind of thinker, making a faux pas after faux pas. One of my special gifts being foot and mouth disease, because for most of my life it's been, if there was a right way and a wrong way to say something, almost guaranteed that I could say it the wrong way. And what that meant for me was that I was often being rejected by others or experiencing a sense of rejection because I didn't know how to communicate very effectively. And what I love about what I'm teaching with the understanding the behaviour energies is giving a greater opportunity to step into and tap into and communicate better with others by understanding them, being able to listen to and communicate with others. Because my husband has expressed it as, he's a provisional psychologist, so he recently finished his psychology degree, and he said it's the theory of mind. And what I discovered and what I'm learning is that my theory of mind was stuck at a very early age. And what that meant is that my perception of how other people are, I thought they were like me. So I couldn't understand when other people got affected, yet I had the awareness that it was a problem, but no idea how to manage it, no idea how to create relationships, and idea how to be socially apt. And so what this system has helped me to do is become more aware. And yes, I've done some other work along the way because we don't develop inside a bubble. And my wish and desire for you is that as you listen to and explore and understand some of these options, it provides insight to you in being able to develop and grow yourself. Because I have a belief that everyone has a right to experience their own optimum version of themselves. And sometimes that means retiring beliefs that we may have held for a really long time, resigning from roles that we may have fueled for a really long time because they were created by us to keep us safe. And what that means is, for example, I'm a good girl because as one of my roles in my family growing up is I'm an eldest child. And as an eldest child, I was often required to be the model of excellence, whether I was excellent at it or not. So when I wasn't excellent, I got into trouble for it. I was overly responsible. I had somewhat of a surrogate parent role because my mother was quite unwell for a lot of the first 10 years of my life. And that wasn't through any fault of her own. That was, I'm the eldest of 4 children. So my mum, who was very unwell, pregnancy and her were not a good relationship. And so she was often unwell. And I am of an age where she was also an Rh negative mother, which for those who are not familiar with that, what it meant is that lots of times for those mothers, if you don't have an Rh negative partner, the baby and your baby's biology and your system fight with each other. And so the mother gets really, really sick, and so can the baby. And by the fourth pregnancy, my mum lost her well, she actually had a fourth pregnancy through to 7 months, was dying. So my dad was given a choice: choose which you want. But if we leave her, mother will die. And we don't know whether we can save baby or not, however, leaving it. So he had a very significant decision to make. And my mum was sick a lot of the time. And then she was depressed from the fact that she lost a baby. And as an eldest child, a lot of the fallout fell on me, not through her intention, but by circumstance. However, I then had an identity that was about looking after the family, which is a lot of responsibility for a 6 and 7-year-old to have. And we do it without conscious awareness. We do it without intention. And then we build a family system of expectations that nobody is consciously intending to be happening. So part of my motivation is in supporting families to understand some of the dynamics that come into play and why they may have come into play, and supporting them to work through them to be on the other side of those, recognizing that a lot of the beliefs that we may have created are those of our juvenile self. And it's not saying that we are being juvenile, and sometimes perhaps we are, because certainly from an emotional management perspective, that can be what's in play. It's why we then make very childlike choices. And it's not because we are childish. However, there are limitations within how we were raised. And this then impacts the way we interact with others. It affects the way we operate in our family, which is what creates the tension that can be happening, and why I love being able to share these models. And this is just one of a few that can support a family to recognize where they can potentially make adjustments, and actually quite small ones, to affect greater quality peace at home. And while my intention initially was to be speaking about the critical alignment model, I've actually stepped back a little bit to look at this behavioural profiling, because this is something that you can tap into and apply across your entire world and the way you interact quite quickly. And so I am looking forward to sharing more depth about how to read these different behavioural profiles and empower all of us who are participating, and to you specifically, to read the people in your life and be able to have the insights and experience and say, okay, yeah, we don't all think the same way. Some of us know it at an intellectual level, have no idea how to apply it. Some of us have no idea at an intellectual level why this is happening. And it's recognizing we're not alone, because most of us do this on a sliding scale, and it's completely normal. And being aware of it and open to the possibilities empowers us to make the changes that are needed and that we may in fact enjoy. So this is the presentation part 2 on the 4 behaviour energies. And as I said, this is me, and you will have met my children, and my personal motto is adapt and overcome. And I truly believe in empowering ourselves, empowering each other, empowering our family to become its best version of itself that was created before our family and the limitations, with all due respect to our parents and their parents, they were doing the best they knew how, and sometimes that was opportunity for development. So understanding each other better enable us to have better quality relationships, provides an opportunity to overcome misunderstandings. It's about moving away from making assumptions based on who we are and tapping into who those around us are intending to be. And I happen to use the DISC behaviour profiling system because it made so much sense to me. Because unlike, I've been through the Myers-Briggs, but that profile, while quite accurate, is actually quite limiting because it tells us who we are, and the behaviour profiling shows us that we actually have access to all of the different energies. And it's just how easy is it for us to be in each of those places. And it's the same for our children, except that our children are even earlier in their development process. They will have times as part of their development journey where their priority in their development will actually be on each of these quadrants. Because these don't settle to have a captain until we're approaching adulthood in the 16-ish age. In fact, the professional online profiling tool that I utilize in my practice is not recommended for people under the age of 16 because of the cognitive abilities that are required in order to be able to give a valid response. However, as parents, we know our children fairly well, and the generic information that's available to us can actually identify where our child is at right now and watch their development and see, well, okay, my child's captain appears to be one of these or a couple of these, and how can I support them to also remain being able to access those other pieces at a more flexible rate, at a more easily, in order to be able to manage their needs in any given moment. And that's where I see the value in understanding and appreciating a system like this, because it helps us to be able to connect even deeper with our child, connect more effectively with others, because it takes us out of the selfish perspective of what's wrong with me or why don't they understand, and actually start to appreciate, this other person may be having difficulty with this concept or idea because for them, the way that they look at the world is from one of these other perspectives. And that's what was like the big aha moment for me, was it's not about me when I'm working with another person, whether it be connecting with a child or in a work environment. It's actually, what about them? How can I understand them better? And that's called Leadership 101. That's when we move from being a positional leader, which is the lowest form of leadership, according to John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership, and actually moves us into the level 3-4, which is about actually empowering others, recognizing and appreciating each of their own brilliance and enabling them according to their strengths. And not many of us are taught how to do that. Some of us are naturally gifted. My husband happens to be pretty good at that stuff, which I suspect is why we've been able to be married as long as we have, because he's been able to, in his own strength, be able to identify and support me, who was the flighty, big vision, needs some wrangling, needs to have a calming influence, because that's what makes the yin and yang of relationship, and how we can make it more effective and influential in the way that we create relationship. It's whether within the family, this model works as a way of becoming an influencer in our own areas of network and our ability to influence others through gaining the skills, awareness and knowledge that we can tap into any individual's, their needs rather than our needs. Because in the words of Zig Ziglar, the more we can meet the needs of others, the greater quality will be how we have our needs met. And isn't that the intention of our existence in the world, is to actually have a level of enjoyment, and many of us don't choose that. So we're looking at the disc behavior energies, and we have our dominants who are results driven. They're our 6-year-old skill set, which are noticing they want to win. They want to win because their desires are significance and certainty driven. They want to be acknowledged and validated. They need appreciation. If we can meet their need, they will feel less threatened. And that can be a really weird concept, because we know we care for our children. However, what we forget is the meanings that they're creating are different to our intentions, because they can't read intentions. They can only read what's in front of them. And until age 6 or 7, they have no ability to think through what might be going on. They can only interpret what they see going on. And if you were to spend the time to think, well, okay, how would I see that if I didn't understand the links together from cause to effect? What would I create? What meaning would I create? And that's why communicating with our kids is so important, to help them organize their thoughts. Because I describe it as providing an external hard drive, because they don't have the intrinsic software yet to be able to do that. However, their brain can process it when the external hard drive that has the capability is provided. The dominant is quite a masculine energy. And if you can relate to that, and remember, this is not about gender, this is an energy type. So I happen to be, or for most of my life, quite a masculine energy. My husband even said it a few months ago. He said, "You're more masculine than I am, Leanne," because he's a mother nurturer type. It's not about gender. It's about how we interact with the world. And we have both energies within us. And it's why some women will have more masculine ways of interacting for the world. And that means that they need significance and certainty. They're more likely to want appreciation, even though they're female, because the masculine energy needs those things in order to operate. So, and then you have your influencer type. Well, that's a feminine energy, because it's more about the journey. It's more about having fun. It's less task focused and more broadly focused, which is the difference between the function of men and women. Because a man is designed for hunting from our prehistoric age, and women are designed to look after the children and the environment to which we're in. So we are scanners, and men are seek missiles. So it's one of the tensions that often happens in relationship, because have you ever heard of fridge blindness? Well, it's how a man can go into a fridge, and if the butter doesn't jump into his hands, he may not find what he's looking for. However, when a woman goes in, she'll scan and she'll see the butter behind maybe a lower level item, because she's designed to scan through, whereas a man is designed to heat, missile, seek. And then those energy aspects cut across, which is why a masculine energy female will have aspects of mission orientation focus, whereas the feminine energy man, and not effeminate, because my husband's a retired military officer. There ain't nothing pretty girly about him at all. However, he is a nurturer. He is a shepherd. He looks after his flock. And you'll notice that in your children. You may have a very dominant 6-year-old daughter and a very influencer 3-year-old son who is kind of there, and it's fairly typical from a family system psychology perspective that the children will be fairly opposite to each other, because that's how they identify their place in the family. Then a supporter is a really feminine energy, and its archetype is actually mother. They are the people in an organization who I describe as the engine room. They're the people that just get stuff done. They don't look for accolades. And in fact, accolades are often uncomfortable for them, because they often just feel like they're doing their job. And so being acknowledged for what they perceive as doing their job is like a little over the top. You may have a child who is like that. And even if you're a dominant who likes the accolades, they may not like, and they may become very uncomfortable and feel quite threatened. And so it's great to understand when we have that quiet child. And if we are that type and we have a child that's that type, instead of passing on our negative beliefs about being that kind of person, which frankly was about meeting other people's expectations, is to actually appreciate them for who they are, which is they like comfort and certainty. They're highly reliable. They will do things and just keep at it. So if they're appreciated for their strengths, instead of being doubted for the way they don't step into opportunities, they might become more willing to go outside of their comfort zone by being comfortable that they are accepted as who they are. And that gives them the opportunity to be willing to expand. And our conscientious, they're our tech head, professor. They're the type of person who's into precision. They are the kid that will have reminded you that last week you said blah, 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 and this week you said wah, 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 and that means that they've noticed that you changed your mind. Now, that's not a critical issue unless you make it one, because they're just demonstrating where their comfort zone is. Again, they're masculine energy. However, they are quite different to a dominant, which is about significance of self, trusting self, having autonomy and control of self. The masculine energy in the C is about conscientiousness. Their expertise in life is making sure that the rules get followed, things are done the right way. They take much more time to make decisions. They think about all of the possibilities. Their question in life is what if? And they can be a pain in the neck for those who are not like that. The S's are most tolerant. The D's and I's think, come on, come on, come on, come on. Because D's and I's are big picture, they're future focused, whereas S's and C's are past focused. They need to feel and see and think about what is right and what is best. And when we can understand that, I had a friend who, when we first did this training together, she has an Asperger's child. Well, an Asperger's child is, and kids on the ASD spectrum are C energy off the edge of the corner of the chart, up there in extreme. They're one of the few behavioural profile that actually are almost pure that energy and find it super difficult to experience any of the rest. That doesn't mean that we can't encourage them to step outside of their comfort zone. And this is the difference between kids who are limited by their diagnosis and kids who succeed despite their diagnosis. And it's all about parenting perspective and appreciating that each of these have a place in the world, and the way that we interact with them is, rather than seeing the limitations, being aware of the limitations and encouraging the strengths. So your dominant, who is highly outcome focused, so of course they're more likely to be dominant, which can be quite intimidating for any of us who may not be quite dominant. They want to win. They're warrior and bull. They're able to stand their ground and they want to win. However, if you understand that that's your child's preference, instead of thinking about you and what you want to win, is look at, well, okay, how can I address that child's needs so that I can get what I want? Because far too many of us are trying to win against our child. And of course, if we've got a D child, boy, we're going to have a tough time. Please excuse me. And as I mentioned, their core needs, which comes from the work of Tony Robbins. His original work came out of working with over 3 million people, and he picked out these as core to all humans, no matter our economic status, our geographic location, our cultural upbringing. That these 6 core needs are certainty and uncertainty, and certainty comes from the need for predictability. It's the other aspect, flavors they come in are comfort, security, safety. The significance is, for this, their significance can be met not by being a rah-rah, because quite frankly, yes, they want to win. However, we can create them to be egocentric, and it is the way that we interact with them, whether you can identify with it or not. We create the environment to which our child responds. And if we're too rah-rah with them, we can turn them into an egocentric narcissist with no conscious intention at all. In some ways, it's what happened for me. I am a recovering narcissistic tendencies. Sorry, no judgment, please. And certainly when I work with clients, judgment-free zone, because I know that when we live in a judgment-free zone, we have the opportunity to be able to open up, because we're no longer in survival mode, and we can make choices that we otherwise wouldn't be able to meet. And one of my mentors shared that for all of us, we sit on a continuum, and we're codependent and narcissistic. And at the outer edges, we are picture postcards of what that means. However, most of us are actually quite close to the center, and it's just how resourcefully and unresourcefully that we meet those needs, whether we're under-functioning or over-functioning in that space. And there's not enough time in this presentation to do that, but that's amongst what I cover in the way that I work with clients and the knowledge that we gain and share so that we can understand people better. And through working and understanding each other better, we can meet each other's needs more effectively. And if you have a significance-driven child, is actually supporting them in meeting their significance needs through enabling others to feel significant, because that's a resourceful way of meeting the needs for significance. And I don't know whether you've ever done it, but when you serve others, for the vast majority of us, we get a glow inside. So by serving others ahead of ourselves, we feel like we're worthy. And doing that in a healthy way is how we can support our dominant child to actually become a healthy leader rather than be a bully, because an immature dominant will be a level 1 leader, which is about position. They tend to not trust others. They will criticize others so that they feel better about themselves. And if you notice your child doing that, whether they're a D or not, what that tends to indicate is that their feeling of significance is not being met. And it's information that you can utilize to pivot what's going on. Because siblings will fight. What that looks and sounds like can be different according to what is the need. One of the things that I notice in the work that I do in supporting parents is that for little kids, a lot of times parents will go to, oh, the child needs more connection. Well, if you've been doing connection and your child's still not coping, then perhaps there's an opportunity to think, oh, maybe it's not actually connection at all. Maybe it's significance that needs to be met, and it could be one of the others. Because these core needs also tend to indicate which is their dominant profile, because they are related, because it's the order of the top two. So certainty, its antithesis is uncertainty. And we need both. They're not the opposites. They're a paradigm that needs to be shared, because too much certainty and everybody's life would be boring and there would be no challenge. And significance and certainty is very much, and every man that you've ever known likes to be appreciated. And that's part of the significance role. And if we can meet that need rather than getting frustrated by feminine likes to be heard. Well, practically every argument that I've ever heard inside an intimate relationship is one would like to be appreciated, the other wants to be heard, but neither of them are prepared to compromise or meet the other one's needs, which is why they create tension. However, when we're willing to step into the other person's needs, funnily enough, in the couples that I've worked with, where I've only worked with one side of the couple, the relationship has still improved because the person that I'm working with is able to understand their partner better, able to meet their needs of their partner better, and therefore start getting their needs met, because I'm usually working with the feminine partner, which can be a male or female, most frequently female. And when we can meet the other partner's need, when they can meet the other partner's need, suddenly, just like with our children, they can start meeting the needs of those around them because their bucket is full. And we need to keep filling that bucket so that they can cope with the difficulties of what's going on in life. Because the more we can meet their uncertainty or their needs, the greater the chance of creating the illusion of balance, which is all that we want. We want to feel well-rounded and full. And the catch cry of the dominant is just do it, because they're after the result and the outcome. You'll notice the pros and cons. So amongst the strengths of a D is they're determined to get the results. They tend to do things quickly. They're risk takers because their tendency to want to do anything to reach the result. They might be a little rough. They might, in their desire to meet, might lack consideration of other people's feelings. They don't do it consciously. They often don't do it. They're so focused and targeting in on what they actually want that they don't even realize that they're running over other people. And so our opportunity is to supporting them to be more aware. And with our 6-year-olds, it's instead of worrying that they're getting to be a bully, is appreciating that they're learning their autonomy and how to support them being more aware rather than being threatened by, that they will be sore losers. It's actually natural. And rather than focusing on the behavior, which is only the effect of what's worrying them, and their worry is that by being a loser, they are not winning. And winning is important to them. And so the opportunity is to support them. Well, okay, how do I reframe their perspective of being disappointed at not win? Because essentially it's not that they're losing, it's that they're not winning is why they're disappointed, is to look at what have they won. Well, actually, chances are, and it's all circumstance based, is that what they've learned is when they are actually able to lose gracefully, absolutely fine to be disappointed, because that's human. Because we all like to do well. And they can seem selfish because they do like to win. It's supporting them to have better perspective, but it's also understanding if your child is under the age of 6, these are the qualities that they're actually supposed to have, because right now it's important that they learn to look after themselves so they are self-absorbed. That's not a bad thing. It's then sorting out the behavior from the need, because what they need is to be looked after. And if we stop looking at them as being selfish and self-absorbed and doing a risky behavior, instead of over-responding and overreacting to that, is supporting them to get more perspective, because they don't have the capacity to do it by themselves, which is why it's so important to validate their experience. What they're feeling is theirs. Brushing it over or minimizing is actually quite hurtful. Even though we think that it's better, it's actually better for us. It's not better for them. We don't like the way that they're behaving. It either makes us feel uncomfortable, or we're worried about what their future will be like if they're being overly self-absorbed and selfish. And actually, for a kid under the age of 6, all of these qualities are great to be growing, so that they learn that they can tap into them when they need them. In adult world, it's providing feedback. They actually like direct compliments. So if you've got a 6-year-old, actually thank them for doing whatever it is, even if you know that you would have preferred that it be done better. They make their bed. It doesn't matter whether it doesn't pass the army recruit test of dropping a coin on it to see if it flipped. They will get better as they get more experience. Be specific. If you're providing feedback, it's the feedback sandwich of good things first, opportunity for improvement, what they're doing well, and being able to consult with them, being willing to consult, even with your 2, 3, 5-year-old, because they're humans too. Sure, they don't have as many mind capabilities as we do. That's not the purpose. And if you've read or would like to read The Whole Brain Child, what it does is sharing about how in these early years, the main reason for communicating with them is so that they can build the bridges between logic and emotion, because they don't have those bridges initially. It's part of what happens in their mind development. So we want to be encouraging the building of neural pathways that cross across between their logic brain and their feeling brain. Because otherwise they end up stuck too much in one side, which is why you'll have an emotionally volatile child, because they know how to do feeling, don't know how to manage logically. Or you'll have a very logical child who may be a great comfort to you, except that they don't know how to do emotion and they don't know how to manage their emotions. So when they have an emotional breakdown, they literally have a breakdown because they don't know how to stop it. And what we're doing in these first 15 or so years is actually supporting these. And it's what I keep saying to parents. Parenting is a long game. You might be having a problem in the moment. That's just the effect of what needs to be addressed. And if we become the scientists, just like our children, and we look at test and measure and looking at the opportunity or what might the problem be, and then test and measure what's going on. Because our pre-verbal, pre-language children, they will improve their language abilities as they grow in maturity and understanding words and actually using language that's age appropriate for them, because a 2-year-old is good and bad's just about the limits, or they might have angry, might be a word that they know how to define it. They don't have any of the subtleties. That's okay. Our communicating with them is going to support, which is why talking with our child, in the beginning, talking for our child, like as I can remember a few months ago, and it made me really think about what did I used to do when my kids were little. Because for those who haven't heard, my children are 37, 32, 30 and 25. So it's been a while since I had little kids. However, I'm very conscious of the now effect on our pre-adult children and the way that we interface to them and where our opportunities are, and wow, how much we can change the quality of our children's lives and upgrade the quality of ours and the family through just better understanding and communication and creating healthy meanings and healthy boundaries. So another one of the aspects of working with a D child is, because they like to win and they like results and outcomes, is to, once they're proficient at something, give them something new, offer them a challenge that expands them. So they're likely to master things sooner, and by leaving them and not providing the opportunity, they miss out on receiving significance, i.e. acknowledgement of their proficiency. It's the leadership challenge of understanding where your child, just like at work, where they are on the learning journey. The learning journey being, we don't know what we don't know. We know what we don't know. We know what we know, and we grow our proficiency, and then the cycle starts again with a new activity. And a D needs that more than anybody else, because that's how they constantly have their need for significance addressed, and it's their certainty of self that they are improving. And so they'll keep on being willing to take the next step into that journey of expansion. They like to work on their opportunities, and I think I may have got distracted telling a story of a friend of mine a couple of years ago when we did this training. She is a high DI theatre nurse in a high trauma theatre environment. So she's about significance of self and trust in self and certainty in what she delivers in her role as head theatre sister in a team of trauma, in a trauma team. Her older child has Asperger's, who is that high compliance, actually needs information. There'd been a lot of tension in this house because the 9-year-old and the mum are practically opposite in their behaviour preferences. When mum realised, who's results driven, so it was super easy for her to apply the concept once she understood the concept and the benefit, was to realise when her child isn't doing what she's asked to do, is to actually check in whether she needs more information, because a C energy actually needs to understand. They don't stop because they're being obstructionist. They stop because they want to make sure they're doing it right. Well, you can imagine what that small difference in understanding did for their family communication, because mum, instead of getting angry at Miss C Energy, realised she actually needed more information, and actually that extra 2 minutes of explaining stopped the hour and a half worth of disagreement on why won't she do what she's asked. Within 6 weeks, the whole temperature inside the family had dropped to the point that it was being noticed outside of the family. At school, the teacher saw the difference in the child, learnt how to recognise these differences, and was flexible enough to be able to be willing to try it out. Well, the ripple effect in the classroom, because this teacher was so willing to explore something different, was within 6 weeks, instead of treating our children as one size fits all, which a lot of teachers do, and I understand why they do, because they've got to manage a lot of different kids. However, treating them as if they are the same is an injustice to the kids and creates frustration for the teacher. And, it's realising that. And so these are with a bunch of grade 4s, so they do need a little bit of management, because 9-year-olds are still to get well-rounded decision-making skills, still learning the link between cause and effect, because they're in that window when logic and reasoning is coming together. but she took the risk at testing it out. And that's all I encourage you to do with any of this. Doesn't work for you? Well, maybe you're the exception. However, by applying this in her classroom, within 6 weeks, they had parents of other similarly challenged children wanting to know what was going on because their child wasn't melting down at home when they got home, because their needs that may have historically been being managed at school because they understood what they're supposed to do were being met at school. So they were no longer melting down at home because their behavioural needs were being addressed in the classroom. So their inner world was more relaxed instead of spending the day in anxiety trying to manage what they knew, because home is safe world. It's what happens with our children is that when they get home from school, if we've got a behaviourally challenged child that's actually managed all day to fit well at school, and they get home and melt down, well, it's actually natural. Especially the younger the child, the more likely that is to happen, because it takes a lot of energy to behave outside your natural style. And that was a big aha for the parents, their ability to tap into their own children's needs, to make these changes at home. Socially, the dynamic completely changed in the classroom. The success factors of all the students elevated because they were all having their emotional needs met within the classroom environment, which meant that they had then more energy to focus on what they were learning. The teacher was prepared to be flexible enough because she started to see the benefits, and quite quickly, what more could any individual human want than to actually be understood? And kudos to the teacher and teachers that I now know can tap into this, and how as a parent we can still create that level of outcome by approaching and having our child's met and accepting the issues that may happen because they're not met during the day, because we remain the biggest influence to our children. So your Jester, it can also be a difficult behavioural profile at school. They're the kid that tends to lose stuff, because if they're not having their need for a variety met at a high enough level, we humans will create ways of having our needs met, which is why our children melt down. Why they are behaving in different ways is because they're finding a way to have their core needs met. So with an influencer, their core needs are connection and variety. Now, variety is a form of uncertainty. So it's the match to certainty. The more uncertainty in our lives, the more certainty we need to find, which is why in a small child, routines and rituals are really important, because their lives are quite uncertain because they are changing all the time. All the time. Like if you've got a kid under the age of 8, they're having big neurological transitions every 2 years, and they're having developmental adjustments every 6 months. From 1 through to 8. So now that I understand this, I do perhaps sometimes get a level of amusement when a mother of a 5-year-old, so nothing in my child's life has changed, and yet this behaviour is happening. It's because the child has changed. The environment might be the same. However, the person who's interacting to the environment has changed. You know, this is a feminine energy because they're into the journey, and these are the kids more likely to be the class clown. That's having their need for connection and to be, that's also part of their significance, because we all still need significance. It's not their driver. It might be the unresourceful way that they're having their need for connection. Because I don't know about you, but the class clown in most of the classes that I've been in was often a popular kid if they were doing it well, because they were doing stuff that most of the rest of us wouldn't. So there's this envy that becomes part of their draw card because they're doing stuff that the rest of us wouldn't want to do, but we'd love to be able to do it. So these are a slightly lower energy, and these are the ones who want to be liked. That is their driver. So if you've got a kid that wants to be liked, pushing them to win is likely going to be a little bit of a headache, because winners are not often popular, because we all want to be accepted as being good enough. And if someone's always winning, oh, maybe that's just me. Maybe that's because I perhaps maybe have had a need for significance when I was younger. But this is my dominant profile. So connection and variety. And in fact, my uncertainty, because uncertainty comes in variety, adventure, challenge. And I actually like a good challenge. I like to do different things. I like to do new things. I like to challenge myself. I like to be challenged. At work, I remember one of my bosses described me as great at herding cats. And I don't know if you know what that means, but what it means is that I can look at all sorts of diverse pieces of information or different behavioural types and actually try and bring them together without getting caught up in all of it. I once looked after a scientific advisory board, and I don't know if you've ever worked with academics, but boy, they're the professor types who actually need significance and certainty. So having their routines for them, being able to tell them exactly how everything was going to be going so that they felt comfortable and confident, and then there was part of my role. You know, it's the feminine aspect of it is because it's about connection. It's what women do, and the feminine energy does best. And these are the people who want to have fun. So if you've got a kid who's not enjoying their homework, which is looking at how can you, one of the ways that you can potentially get them more motivated to do their homework is either to figure out how to gamify what they're doing so that it's more fun to do, or you can set the boundaries as they get older of, well, okay, we can do this first, then this. Avoid having fun being a reward, because reward presupposes that doing homework is a punishment. And so we end up sending the wrong message by suggesting that the fun thing is a reward, and we end up undermining ourselves. So if we've got an influencer kid and we can figure out how to support them to feel that they're having fun doing what they're doing, they will get more joy out of it, which would consequently we get more joy. Winner, winner. What more could we ask? So the pros are enthusiastic. In case we didn't recognise yet, pick me. Active, relationship expert, well, that's opportunity for development for me. However, I'm now becoming expert because that is my natural tendency. Now that I've overcome some of the beliefs from the roles that I got allocated as I was growing and maturing, and I get stuff done, my opportunity for development is finishing. And so what happens is that often where your influencer child, your joker jester child, might need a little bit of support, because they may head in enthusiastically 100 miles an hour into doing it, then they'll get bored. So supporting them in how to create their variety so that they can also experience connection. One of the things that I noticed with one of my children was that doing homework with others, so we would often have homework parties at our house for that child and their friends, because that's what worked, was more willing to be doing stuff with their friends because they could have fun doing it. And then for me, it was, if they were having fun, was to allow the fun and being able to bring them back on task and have the blend of that. And that in itself is a level of mastery for both the children to have learned, as well as feedback for me in how to manage people who are perhaps have a tendency towards having these needs. Now, the concept of the I style is that they are tapped into emotional, so they can appear highly emotional. They may in fact be, because for someone like me, this might be the set point, and for the vast majority of us, we have more inclination towards mania. So our low point is almost most people's set point, and our extreme is overly extreme. When we're unhappy, it's only a little bit depth, but it seems we don't tend to get stuck at the bottom of the, I was going to use a maths term, parabola. We don't tend to get stuck at the bottom of the wave, because we're more likely to be manic. And everybody is a sliding scale. But if you've got a kid that tends to be overly excitable, it's quite possible that they might have a fair bit of I in them, and it's how to support them to be managing that in functional and effective ways. You know, it's that butterfly all over the place, too many balls in the air, because we're trying to do everything because we like the variety. However, we do need to tap into getting to an outcome, so putting on a little bit of our D energy, getting our supporter and actually following through and digging in, and being confident in our knowledge, which is our C energy. And so it's that lovely dance of being able to go around, and it's appreciating that developmentally we're all going through these. The I style is very much a 4 to 6 year old skill. We're not all like that, but that's when those skills are coming into our persona and into our neurology, and it's how to balance these effectively, because they're all available to us. It's just how easy is it for us to access. Oh, it's gone again. The supporter is the steady, confident certainty, feminine energy. This archetype is mother. The mother archetype is there supporting others for their success. They don't tend to like to be singled out. They're just quietly doing their job, and they're happy to do their job because they like the certainty of just sitting in the background, getting stuff done. We, as a human, might be a mother. However, we may not be a supporter. We may tap into those, like I'm an I can do this role when I am mothering because I'm a lioness. So I've got a DS thing that happens. Even though I'm an I and heavily into variety, when I'm doing mother role, I'm often in that side link of making sure that I'm empowering my children and being their backstop, their reliability, their trust, their being there to enable their success. You know, this is a mid to lower range energy type, which is why a mother archetype will be, they tend to speak more quietly, they tend to speak more in a gentler tone. They want to be comfortable, because comfort, safety and security are important to them. They want to be connected. They tend not to like conflict, because that can break connection. They like things to be certain, which is the comfort and security, which is why they're quite happy to be in the type of job where they go to work, they do the work, they come home, they do a great job, they tend to be highly reliable. If you've got a supporter kid, they're likely to they're more likely to be doing their homework, because they don't like to get into trouble, for no other reason than they don't like to stand out. So if you get stuck into your kid because they're not doing homework to the level that you want, and you have a supporter kid, well, actually you're being their worst enemy, which is you're making them stand out. You're showing a light onto them that makes them really defensive. And so if you can realize that actually if they're having trouble with their homework or getting started, is that they like to do things together. And so there is an opportunity to evaluate, hey, see, you seem to be avoiding your homework. And I understand sometimes homework can be a bit challenging, and that sometimes it might be a little difficult. And I'm curious, would you like a little help, or are you all good? And it's those little aspects that can make a huge difference to their wanting to succeed. Can you imagine how it would have been for you as a kid if your parents had really appreciated you and your driver, and how much more joy you would have experienced in life? And maybe your parents did really, really well, because some people's parents did. And some people's parents had no idea. And some of this, the tension in our lives, is we're actually naturally one behavioural type, which is me. I'm an I, is my natural. However, as an oldest child, I adapted to be a D, because my parents were, pushed me to be outcome focused, because they needed me to be achieving so that they felt better. And they don't do it consciously. Our parents don't do it. It's the tribal cycle stuff. If you happen to be interested in looking at that, it's the work of John Bradshaw. There's a fair bit now. Sharon Pearson's written a couple of books on this. She happens to be one of my mentors. It's the Ultimate You work, which has been essentially the journey I've been on over the last 4 or 5 years in being able to understand this stuff and become a better relationship with myself, because it was, what's wrong with me? I know that I've got problems, had no idea how to fix them, and highly defensive. I have come from the narcissistic side of the relationship continuum. And it's remembering that those on the narcissistic side actually have had greater trauma in their lives. So the narcissistic side have felt the need to have bigger, higher walls to protect themselves. Whereas the codependent side their problem is that they tend to have no walls. They think that there's something wrong with them and that they deserve everything that's wrong. So what happens is that they don't have healthy boundaries, because they didn't know how to form them. They didn't know. They tend to be people pleasers. And one of the things that I learned in my journey was that I am one of these super open book type people. And my coach eventually pointed out to me, she said, no, you're not judgmental of others in a traditional sense of being judgment, because I'm highly accepted and not judgmental of others, other than, and the aha for me was, I judge other people for how much I think they're going to hurt me. And now I realize it doesn't matter. I have enough in myself to be able to do that. I didn't know that because I'd never received the opportunity to understand that about myself. And there's a lot of us who experience that through no fault of our own. It's part of our challenge is overcoming the identity of being not good enough. And that's what these can help us to understand ourselves and also support us in being able to communicate with our children so that they don't get to have that internal feeling that we have. Because a vast majority of us are probably trying to avoid turning our children, giving them the experience that we had growing up, because we have realised that the needs are different and that it's a different way of being in the 21st century. And some of us have partners who don't understand it. But this is where, if we can understand those around us better so that we can serve them better, which means that we will have a better experience. And it's not about being rescuing people. It's not about judging others. It's not about being a people pleaser. It's about learning the healthy way to be together. And most of us as children missed out on that, because if we're over the age of 25, this type of understanding of how we develop into a human didn't exist. It's new work. If you're a little geeky like me, the work of Dan Siegel is, he's written heaps of books. He is the whole brain child. If you've got older kids, brainstorm. I find all of that material fascinating, even though I'm now past those development stages in my children, just in understanding me, how to support others to give them an understanding of what's going on so that they can avoid the tribal cycle effect, which is human, and we can do it better. And so the cons of the S style is, the pros are, they are the lovely people, because they tend to be more likely to be people pleasers because they do not like conflict. However, they might be really resentful because actually we all get sick of meeting everybody else's needs in one way or another. They gain trust because they tend to hold secrets well. They're not likely to gossip. They're much less likely to gossip, certainly if they're being resourceful. They're more likely, because they don't like conflict, to seek compromise. And for them, family and friends are really important because relationship and connection is really important to them. The frustration for most of us is that they tend to be slow because they take time, because they want to do things in order to avoid conflict. They like certainty and comfort, so they tend to stick to routine, which can be frustrating for those of us who are not like that. They do tend to say yes, yes. However, that can end up being passive aggressive, because if they become resentful, they will say yes even though they don't mean yes, because they don't know how to say no in a functional and effective way. So the opportunity is to support them to learn how to be okay with saying no when it's appropriate to say no, and how not to just say yes to be agreeable. And again, they tend to give in too easily However, it's also supporting them to be okay with when they concede, because we actually need people who are willing to concede. We can't all be Ds, because otherwise we'd kill each other, because everybody wants to win. And it's also recognizing your S child. Don't make an assumption that they're giving in too easily. It may not, they may be happy to concede because it's not important to them to be the best, to be the winner, to do certain things. It may not hurt their feelings. It may hurt your feelings, and it's important to check in with yourself to see, well, okay, what's bothering me about my child doing this? Is this about them or is it this about me? And it's worth checking in with your kid, because we attribute far too many things to our children that they don't actually think at all. And by attributing thinking to them, we actually create meanings in them that weren't our intention. Oh, that was the feedback thing. Compliance, the tech head, the precision focused, masculine energy. And as we talked about earlier, they are the version, Asperger's, ASD syndrome people, they're out there on the edge. They don't change, they don't do change easily. They're very much past evidence focused. They are also very much, like I was saying, you know, if you said blah, blah, blah last week and you say wah, wah, wah this week, they're gonna say they're more likely to have difficulty with making decisions quickly. So if you need a quick decision from them at the final stage, you actually need to consider exposing them to the fact that they need to be making a decision. You know, I think I was sharing in I think it was the other presentation, the mother who, I energy, goes off to the shops with her 9-year-old who is a C energy, didn't realise this communication thing, decided that they were buying a coat, so kid buys a coat, made a decision, gets home and then says, Mum, actually, I don't like this coat. Well, why didn't you tell me? Well, you wanted a decision. And so for children who are like that, they actually need to be provided, well, any human who is like this, they need to be provided the opportunity to think about it. They need the opportunity to look at the pros and cons and what is. And then they need support in actually making the final choice. However, these are the people that keep the Ds out of trouble. These are the people that look at the risks. And it's tapping into, well, okay, for a D who likes the outcome, there can be a tension between the Cs and the Ds, because the D's fast. Was one of the things that I noticed between my husband and I, because I'm an ID and he's a CS. And what that means is he needs time to process the information. There's an old joke that is, and it applies to any of the C-type jobs, energy, engineering, finance, data management, IT. What's the difference between an introverted engineer and an extroverted engineer? You can tell an extroverted engineer because they speak to your shoes. Because they are often really quiet, significantly introverted. And when I mean quiet energetically, because they might be loud when they speak, however, they speak precisely. For any of you who happen to maybe watch The Good Doctor, he's ASD. He's not quiet, however, he is slow and precise. They tend to be very gifted in their specific C energies, that is, in the very specific area of the precise nature of what they are interested in, which is why it's great as an engineer, because they are looking at the detail, they are making sure everything's all right. They're great in finance because they do make sure all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and it's organised and detailed and correct. You know, it's a quality that is great in the medical field. However, they also need doctors and medical people who are in all of them. It's just that C energy is one of the qualities that is good. My daughter was at school, one of her good friends has Asperger's, who is a nurse, and he's amazing at his nurse because he can learn the people skills, and this is identifying the energy types and being able to recognize the language and understanding, because lots of the times people on the autism spectrum, if they've got fairly low level complexity, they can learn how to recognize these things. They may not do it naturally, they can learn. And that's what's great. And that's what happens with him. The great thing about being a nurse is that he's going to do it right. He can communicate because he's learnt how to communicate with people, and he doesn't get caught up in the emotion. So he can be very precise and do his job well because he taps in to that aspect. And so is what makes great quality. And when you can realise and accept your child just as they are, realising that their pathway in life may be different to yours, however, they can have joy in whatever they do when they're doing it in their area of expertise. Because as I said, lower energy, they want to be right, they don't do change well. Significance and certainty is different here. They want significance because they know they are expert in what they do. They are precise. Their certainty is about doing things the right way, making sure that things are compliant, making sure that things, they're your work health safety people is another great area for people like this to be in. However, they also either need to work with other people who have those different behaviour profiles, because we need to tap into all of these. And they want to do things the right way. Their opportunity for development is growth mindset. And so it's supporting them with having the balance between doing things the right way and being stuck in having to do things only the right way, so that they become less flexible. And it doesn't matter which of these profiles, they can all have fixed or growth mindset. The C energy type, conscientious, compliant, are more likely to get stuck with fixed mindset, and everybody can when they're unwilling to take the risk of doing things differently. And at another time, we can go through how fixed and growth mindset comes about and how we can create fresh opportunities for ourselves and support our children to be as flexible in the way that they approach their thinking and problem solving, so that they can optimize who they are, who they're meant to be, who can be okay in making mistakes and tapping into their desire for perfection in a functional and resourceful way, so that they can enjoy their learning, so that they don't end up with high levels of anxiety, which is fairly typical, especially for conscientious, because they are terrified of making mistakes. So they will live with a high level of anxiety, which of course means that they lose part of their ability, their processing ability, because it's stuck with anxiety, processing and managing anxiety, instead of being able to process and manage other parts. And again, masculine energy, which just means that they are more likely to have tunnel vision. And that's not that it's good or bad, it's that how limiting is their tunnel vision. Can they step back so that their tunnel vision sees that much rather than this much? And it's knowing and teaching them that actually sometimes what might need to happen is that they utilize other people's skills, because this is where collaboration happens. And the conscientious and the dominant are not quite as good at collaboration as the other energies. And it's supporting them to know that it's okay to collaborate to get the pieces that you don't have naturally. It's what's great about team building. It's the purpose of team building. And understanding this aspect also supports us to recognize that having these different ones, if, for instance, if I had a team, if everybody was like me, chances are, and it has happened when I was, before I understood this stuff, is that I lose things, I forget things, because I create variety because I wasn't having enough variety. So even though I present as a really interesting, the most useful and least informative word in the world, is, you know, I have to work hard. It takes me a lot of energy to do this aspect of business. And if I could outsource it, I would. My husband does some of it. He keeps me financially organised. Otherwise, funnily enough, I can do it for others, not for me. And that's another thing that's quite a human thing to do. And it's appreciating that actually this is part of the rich tapestry of life. And the pros are these people are thorough, which is why medical, auditing, finance, IT, their matter-of-factness is just because they know their stuff. They want to know, though, that they're right, which is why facts and information are important. They are slow, not slow on the uptake, but they take their time because they want to make sure they do it well. They're highly detailed, which is why they can get stuck in not seeing the forest for the trees, because they'll be looking at all of the individual data rather than being able to step back and see the bigger issue, which is why they're less likely to be great project managers, because they tend to be precision focused. And it's then if you have awareness of that and you have a project manager who is at work is highly precision focused, they actually need a second in charge who has these gifts and abilities. It's what makes great leadership teams. And it's why, as a husband and wife, my husband and I'm the big picture thinker. My husband can do big picture and he's the precision focused. He's the shepherd and nurturer. I'm the results focused person. So we complement each other really, really well. And it's recognizing that actually your partner, even though they're opposite, instead of seeing it as a problem, looking for the asset within it. and being able to work together in your opposite styles to create the complementary family outcome. And I don't know why that happened, but there was. And so the whole mission here is to support each of us to understand that we are enough, that we belong, and that we are lovable. And everything is test and measure, because just like when your 6-month-old didn't like banana and you're still telling people that your 3-year-old doesn't eat banana, well, when was the last time you tried out banana? Have you now assumed that they don't like banana, or do you know that they don't like banana? And I'm using that example because I've heard it lots, where they tried it once, kid didn't like it. Well, guess what? That might be the case in that moment in time, and unless we try it out again, we don't. So a mother, I was having morning tea with a mum probably about a year ago now, and she had 3-year-old twins. Well, at the moment, he doesn't like celery, or at that time, he doesn't like celery. She still offers him celery, appreciating that he may reject it. One day he might like it. One day he might think, oh yeah, I see so-and-so eating that, or their best mate ate it at kindy or whatever. And all of a sudden they'll try something. And that's why it's important not to assume they don't like it, and also not to get bent out of shape if they happen to reject it at that moment in time. You know, lots of, in my community, I find lots of non-Caucasian culture families who have different diets to traditional, what I might be used to eating. I actually eat all sorts of things. However, if you've got a small child and you come from a subcontinent culture and you didn't bring your child up to eat curry, they might not like curry. It's not that they won't ever like curry. It's just that if they're 4, it might be too spicy for them. Or if you're a people pleaser, you may not have encouraged them because you're a yes person. It's okay. It's just being aware, and it's understanding that we all want to belong. We all want to feel good enough. So we try and be aware of what others need or not. And it's just taking that and looking at that. And if you'd like to find out more, you can join me on Facebook. I'm Leanne G. Wakeling. I'm raising adults in the 21st century is because whether you're a parent who is wanting to raise an adult, or you're an adult who is wanting to be reparented either by yourself or to gain those skills that you may have missed out on. Conscious and intentional parenting is so that instead of parenting on automatic, we become aware of the choices and the things that may have been impacting on the way that we interact with our children, and potentially with the way that we interact with the world. And I'm so grateful for your time here, and that you've spent the time through. I'm grateful that you've had the chance to participate here. If you've got questions, please feel free to message me via Facebook. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about how everybody has enjoyed the summit. And thank you so much for your time.